What is going on, everybody? Hello and happy Saturday. Thank you for tuning in. Before we get into the show, I think we're going to have fun today. I just want to tell you about some stories you may have missed, and then we'll get right into it. So, in case you missed it, I shared on my social media. You can follow me on social media, by the way. It's usually at The Cole Memo. We're also, we've got the handle Chillinois Podcast and everything else. I shared this lawsuit that was released. This is some reporting from the Chicago Sun-Times, the Chicago Tribune. Definitely look into this. Interesting stuff. And then just yesterday, a story broke about a former state cannabis official fined for violating the revolving door ethics law. The reporter that broke this story is somebody who I've been talking to for a while now, and we've been working out a show. So it's very convenient that he happened to drop this show just on time, so we'll be having him on in the future. You know, that revolving door law is something that we've talked about in the past, not only on the podcast, but in my mini documentary. I'm going to give you a quick teaser, and then we're going to bring on today's guest.
Beginning January 1st, 2020, the recreational use of cannabis will be legal in the state of Illinois.
Available to stream now, my mini-doc dives into the history of Illinois legalization, starting with
January 1st, what should we expect? The biggest thing that we need people to understand is that January 1, in terms of the criminal justice system here in this state, is the end of prohibition.
See how Illinois missed its chance at real cannabis reform with key failures, including the fact that
the program includes regulation on possession limits.
So people can still be arrested for a possession.
And I want to highlight that in its first year of legalized recreational marijuana in the state of Illinois, they arrested 3 times as many black people for possession than any other race.
We've run into so much cannabis, we've run out of places to put it.
I have represented people and taken their cases through the court system who got charged with more serious crimes only because the police said that they smelled cannabis. And not because the police said you have illegal cannabis, or not because you have too much cannabis, or not because you're high on cannabis, but because I can smell it and that's it.
Attorney goes, he understands that he can't be smoking and his cannabis flower shouldn't be open. And I was like, I'd like to say for the record that I was not smoking and my flower was not open.
So that's where we're at right now in Illinois, and I hope it changes.
Start watching now at colememo.com/minidoc.
Once again, you can start watching now at colememo.com/minidoc. I'm about to bring on my guest, and let's just bring her on. How's it going, Maddie?
Hi, Cole. Good to see you today.
Yeah, happy Saturday. I need to get my hitter loaded up. While I do that, why don't you remind people who may not know who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. Yes, I'm Made Content, also known as Maddie Scanlon, and I'm the founder of High Focus Media and the Illinois Cannabis Consumption Association. And before I was doing that, I was a data analyst for a cannabis consumer insights group. So I have been steeped in cannabis data, and now I enjoy using all that knowledge to throw cannabis consumption events with High Focus Media while trying to legalize it to make it easier for everyone with ICA.
Hell yeah. And I was just displaying the website. Once again, it's highfocusmedia.com. And then I'm sure you've got handles for ICA and stuff as well, right?
Yeah, meet.icca. That's our main handle. And we're going to be excited to have some work to do soon. So stay tuned with ICA.
Awesome. And you can see it scrolling across the bottom of the page right now for people that are tuned in. But do you want to give a quick plug for any upcoming events, maybe for our listeners who can't see the ticker?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, the reason we decided to advocate was because 400 people showed up to sesh one time, and we realized we had to keep these sessions going. So now we're at our 2nd anniversary Profesh Sesh, which will happen on February 4th in Portage Park at a real cool venue that's going to let us stay warm while we smoke. So
Good stuff. And I will just say that, folks, we are live. So comment below and we can display your comments as we get into the discussion today. We're going to be talking about remediation, a topic that recently, I would say, heated up online for multiple reasons. You know, we've got a video that we can play today and everything else. But before we get into all of that, Maddie, let's just give people, like, if people are like, what the hell is remediation?
Yeah, what is it? It's something that happens to cannabis that makes it pass certain microbial tests, essentially,
Right.
in the simplest way. They make it, destroy things on the cannabis that might be dangerous for whatever reason. And,
Yeah.
and that's like the word remediation isn't even like a cannabis word. Like that's one thing that I think it's like seen as like this dirty word, but I think one of your followers pointed out they remediate food. So that's another thing. It's like in the cannabis scene, when I first heard the word, I definitely thought it was this dirty, scary thing. But then you kind of learn it's more normal than you think in an industrialized world we live in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like and people in the comments, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think and even you, Maddie, a very popular form of what we might call remediation is pasteurization, like of milk,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Getting rid of something in it that could be dangerous to us. So that's a great example.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I've talked about this topic on the show for quite a while. We've had different people even from the companies that offer this technology, and I always try to, like you say, approach it fairly. And for some reason, it's become sort of like a dirty word. And on one hand, I get it because like when you hear about how some people choose to use it, like you know some people lay out the hypothetical scenario sometimes of like, well, your flower's really moldy, so these people put it in a microwave, right? I can see how that, if that's like all you're introduced to, how that could scare you, right?
Hmm.
But
Microwave weed, yeah, I love that. That's such a fun way to put it. It's just like,
yeah, it is a really fun way to put it. That's why I put that as the teaser for our live stream today. I had like a microwave, and because it seems like that's the one that everybody knows about. And I guess in the spirit of trying to be fair on this coverage, like I've always talked about the fact that, like, yeah, ideally you would not need to use that technology. But I'm not aware of any like serious things we should worry about as a result of the use of that technology. Are you at all? And I should just say also that I am not a subject matter expert on this subject. I've been learning over the years.
yeah,
But
me too. It's been something that has been on my radar in the Brightfield days, even considering should we ask consumers if this is something that they care about. But it was never something that came up so significantly in qualitative answering that it needed to. So it is really a very niche industry issue. And at the end of the day, I kind of feel like I want to kind of take a step back as to like why they have to remediate, and because the state sets standards for how much microbials, or really the term they use is CFUs, which is colony forming units, can be on the cannabis. Our level in Illinois is 10 times more stringent than in Michigan. So if you purchase Michigan cannabis, that cannabis would all have to be remediated in Illinois. But is there anything wrong? So that it's kind of like a double-edged sword. There's obviously remediation is a technique that happens that it dries out the weed, it degrades the quality in certain ways, especially depending on the type of remediation and the how long it is needing to be remediated, how extensively. But yeah, there's generally nothing unsafe about it. But it could be preventing things that are unsafe. So I remediate my home grow because I can visibly see powdery mildew on the leaves, and I spray it the best I can. And I think Aaron is on right now. Thank you for telling me about Dr. Zymes. They're organic methods of remediation. And then when I'm done and I'm chopping, I do hydrogen peroxide dump. That's remediation. Like my cannabis, I got on the phone. Like, it's just good old cannabis. It's just good old weed. Like, it just looks like weed. It doesn't look like, it's not dry. It's like there are ways to remediate that don't cause that. But at the end of the day, the point of it is to make the cannabis safer. But when the state is defining safety by this arbitrary metric of 10,000 CFUs per gram, not even considering that some of these CFUs are what makes the weed good, that's where we get into the mess we are in.
thank you. And one of the analogies I was going to use that I can't take complete credit for, I'll have to look up which episode this was, but cultivation consultant, for lack of better words. His name was Kyle Baker. If people want to check out the episode I did with him, it's episode 112, and it's all about the science of cannabis cultivation, testing, and quality control. And to your point, that point you just made, it's like, just to say that there should be none of these colony forming units is like almost like too easy of an answer. And to get to the analogy he made was like, I went to breakfast yesterday and I ordered my eggs over easy. Like on the menu, it says, hey, you're taking a little bit of a risk by ordering your eggs that way. Or same thing if you go and buy a steak, medium rare. Like they'll tell you, you're risking it with food-borne illness. So any thoughts on that before I saw some good comments that maybe we can reply to, but any thoughts on that analogy before we move on?
No, yeah, I see what you're saying, but like at the same time, there are ways to grow cannabis that don't require this. I don't
Right.
want to dismiss that. Like I think that it's because in Illinois it is so difficult though. You shouldn't have to be like the most like, especially since we're all forced to grow indoors. It's just like this crazy catch-22 almost they're put in, or if it's like you dial up one thing, like trying to get good terp quality, and you might be dialing up these microbials that are going to make you not pass tests. And so to me that's why it's unique with cannabis, because it's almost I don't think it directly has an effect of our food quality the same way it has effects on our cannabis quality.
Interesting. Yeah, and I guess what I was trying to say earlier, to put it shorter, like it's almost like people have this idea, and a lot of people talk about this, like Illinois has the strictest standards, and you can literally, like you say, do comparisons like you did. I believe like Michigan is 10,000 CFUGs and Illinois is 1,000. Like
we're 10,000, they're 100,000.
Thank you. Yeah, I remember it was like a big difference is the point. And I guess the point I was trying to make, to put it more shortly, is like strict doesn't always equal better. And I think that's the point you just made, where it's like, these techniques, while they may be applied to other products we consume, like, do we really see like a degradation of quality like we do sometimes with the weed in Illinois that's just fucking dry as hell? Or like this person said, I think they were talking about irradiation. They say it turns it brown.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. There's lots of different methods, and the amount of time they keep it within the machine, and whether or not it's tumbled or like on racks, and that's why all the cannabis in Illinois, it is slightly different in how dry it is. Like I've had ones that you squeeze hard enough and it's like poof, and you're like, holy Christ, you should have made this shake, guys. And then I've had others where it's very fresh, and you're like, wow, okay, well you did something to get this out here. And it's interesting to me that a lot of the brands that don't remediate, that will at least publicly say they don't, are long-standing. They have lots of experience. They have lots of knowledge. They're either here in Illinois or elsewhere.
Yeah. I mean, I just had the former COO and president of Revolution, and he claimed that while he was there, they never had a need to do those practices, if I recall correctly. That's what he said. But to your point, the reason I brought that up is because he had operated in several other markets, so yeah, interesting thought. And I guess maybe that's a good segue to play our little clip today, since you brought up some of the Illinois specific standards. This video has kind of been making the rounds, not only on the world's most positive place in the world, Illinois Trees, but Instagram as well. Let's watch the clip.
Dry weed is better than remediated weed, and Illinois has a very low threshold for yeast and mold, and our employees and work super hard to make sure we're passing those tests without remediating, and that we have to get the moisture out of the weed to pass the tests. So now it's fine tuning, right, to get it to a passing level and the appropriate moisture level. But no, we appreciate the criticism. We're very aware of the dry weed. Yep, we know. We'll fix it this winter for sure.
So, and that's a perspective that's been shared by the folks at New Era as well. I've got an old clip of them talking about, the idea that the testing standards sometimes, and I'm curious if you've heard this, some of these operators say the testing standards are so strict that some people they don't even call it remediation, they call it a kill step, because it's like proactive. Yeah. Have you heard about this?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of what I mean when there's no regulation about it. Like someone comes up to you and says, and it could be well-meaning too. This person who works there might not know that what the kill step is remediation. They could say, do you remediate? And say, no, we don't. Of course we don't. Right. And then like in their handbook is like exactly a minor kill step. Maybe it doesn't have a machine. maybe, yeah, oh, there's no machine here, there must not be remediation. Like there's still other things they can do. There's oxygen deprivation. I mean, but also, I mean, I love IC. I think they are a phenomenal addition to our market because of all their knowledge from California. But in California, they specifically have standards for the bad microbials. So no wonder they had no issues passing their cannabis and having, good grown weed with their current techniques in California. But here they need to tweak it. And so even, I bet the IC cannabis in California, nobody's talking about dry problems there because they're able to grow with a government that understands what it takes on a fundamental chemistry level to grow good weed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like I say, it's an interesting topic, and one of the other things that kind of brought this topic to the forefront for me again. And like I said, we've been discussing this over the years. I'll try to think to add. I know I mentioned episode 112. I'll try to think and go back and add other shows if people want to see other episodes we've done on this topic. But again, the world's most positive place in the world, Illinois trees. Lots of hope and joy shared there, being sarcastic for the people in the know. I saw this post today that says Illinois brands that don't use remediation. And there's a number of logos displayed here. And I just thought it'd be interesting to have this conversation, Maddie. Like, I basically just said, look, these companies should back up their claims with action. In other words, what I mean by that is they should support and lobby for a mandate that requires clear labeling for products that have undergone remediation. And until then, we just have to, and you kind of said this earlier, we just have to trust them at their word. And interestingly enough, Illinois trees being Illinois trees, the response I got was, did you know that every drop of blood that gets donated is irradiated through a rad source? If it's safe enough to literally treat blood that goes into sick humans, I guarantee there's no issue with it being used in cannabis. Same with all your produce. Every pineapple you've ever eaten has been irradiated. Stop the fear mongering. And I said, where did I fearmonger? I'm well aware that other products we consume are sometimes remediated, and yes, I'm aware that pineapples are often irradiated. Do you know how I know that? Because there's transparency about the use of the technology in our food supply. And I just repeated a line they said, if it's safe enough to literally treat blood that goes into humans, I guarantee there's no issue with it being in cannabis. Again, I never said there was an issue. All I asked for was transparency on the use of the technology. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. if it's not a problem, then why not label it?
They're
right?
just sitting there with pitchforks on IL trees.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Yeah.
No, but I definitely think that in a way they're right. Like, but yeah, at the same time, consumer knowledge. But like, live resin isn't even a term that's regulated. Like, come on. There's so many fucking, there's like, none of these cannabis terms, organic. There's still lots of organic pesticides and sprays. And so, the word organic isn't even regulated, when you see that around. So it's just like this fundamental, I guess we call it American issue of like, just not knowing what's going on in our stuff, which is why you should home grow.
Yeah, no, I mean, what you just touched on a huge point that really, really, it's almost like hard to unpack this point, but the way I've heard it described in the past is like, you can't sell like a Pinot Grigio as a insert other wine name here. Like, there are like legal definitions to what these products are. And so, like, I guess to use an analogy in cannabis, I could hypothetically purchase bulk cannabis in a legal system and call it Cole's Cookies. You get what I'm saying? Like, but it could be Gorilla Glue number 4, but I'm allowed to call it Cole's Cookies because you get what I'm saying?
There's no rules. Like, we're still in the Wild West. They legalized making government money off some people selling weed. That's it. Like, you make that point all the time. Like, we do not, like, it, yeah. So it's, I mean, there's so many things like that. There's just like under the table, under the coin that make cannabis mind numbing. So to me, it's like the word remediation is just part of this bigger issue of like, this is a relatively safe thing that's happening. Everybody deserves access to cheap weed. And if that means we got to make it quick, just like you got PBRs rolling out cans of whatever, let's have it. Let's do it. But that's not to say we shouldn't also have premium tiers that are able to be identified through what practices they're legitimately or legitimately not using.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I think the example you started with is like you could, I don't know, you could just make a pretty looking concentrate and call it live resin. I mean,
You
what's
still like carts and call them live resin.
Yeah, and what's to stop you from calling them rosin?
Nothing. Like,
You know?
we don't even have a governing agency like in Illinois. Like, we couldn't even come to a conclusion on an Office of Cannabis Management. So, like, we just have some people at the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation trying to figure out how to make the most money off this. So it's just very there's a long way to go.
Yeah.
So, and if there's no advocacy behind such content, then what is the point? Is all I'm saying.
Right. Right. And to keep the conversation just like, again, I mean, ideally, I don't want weed that's been remediated. I think it's something that comes with growing at scale. And I mean, even I'll take that back because you've said it and somebody else in the chat said it. They grow indoor weed and sometimes they have to take what you might call measures that you could consider remediation. I think Two Dope Dudes said washing is a form of remediation. I mean, I've always kind of thought that, like, if you grow plants outdoors and you bring it in, and let's face it, I know he was just talking about washing in or growing indoors, I think, but bugs can get on your plants. And like, do you want to smoke bugs?
I smoke a lot of bugs.
But you can wash it, right? You know, like
yeah.
it's you can.
But that's the
wash
point.
it.
I smoked a lot of bugs and I've been like pretty okay too. Not to be weird, but
Sure.
so that's like,
I mean,
you know.
Aren't there bugs in some of our foods? Isn't
Yeah,
that
we
like
even have an acceptable amount of rat shit in our cheese. Like, there's an acceptable amount of caterpillar poop that can be in my wheat.
Mm.
No, I'm fooling on that one, but you know what I'm saying. It's just like the people who make these rules aren't here for us to have good product, but we deserve good product. But also, like, we've got a great budget tier just at a high price in this state. That's how we are. There's like shitty tier of weed, and you know, there's some outstanding ones like Icy, like Fig Farms, I'd say, but they're all coming from people who were able to grind it out in the West Coast where they could figure these things out with a government that was more friendly. So
yeah, well, I guess what I'm like, it's like I'm trying to take this fair and balanced approach that it's like, it's not that I don't agree with the people that come at this and they're like, I want weed that's never been remediated, it's organic, it's this or that, pesticide free, you know, all of these things that sound good. I am like obviously all for that, but I'm also trying to say that I don't think that just because some people apply these techniques that they're completely bad. I'm not saying they're completely good either. Look, we're smoking something. Like in most cases, like me and you right now, we're literally putting something in a pipe and lighting it on fire. Yeah.
Yep.
So but I don't know. I just hope that sometimes nuanced takes like that get you shot on the internet. But I hope that people can like see that I'm trying to say like, yeah, obviously I'd prefer my weed to be as pure as it could be. But like, I don't know. I guess what I'm just trying to say is it does seem like usually when people talk about remediation that they are like fear mongering. And I've always tried to take like a fair and balanced approach to this topic, you know?
Yeah. I want to live in a world where we can all grow in the sun and be held to reasonable standards. Like, that's all. And I feel like if you're gonna say we gotta butter wash it, I just hope we can do it in hydrogen peroxide. And you know, the keeping legalizing reality is what I like to call
it. Yeah. Yeah. Somebody's talking about water hash and guerrilla growing. Yeah, didn't even think about that.
I actually made some hash for my trim.
Yeah.
From water hash is super fun.
We don't have to get off the topic of remediation yet, but I thought this was an interesting comment when we were talking about organic earlier. They were saying the word organic is regulated through USDA, and they say another reason hemp is better. And someone said, yeah, you'll get sued hard if you don't pay the USDA to use the word organic.
Yeah, but the point is that they just made more pesticides, just like they made Delta 8. So that's why I say the word organic is bullshit.
Yeah.
So if you think the loophole of only exists here in hemp, like, I have a chemist husband. The world is scary.
Yeah. Yeah. Two Dope Dudes says patients who need cannabis for everyday medicine deserve access to clean medicine. And yeah, that kind of just gets me back to my point where it's like, look, no matter where you stand on this issue, if you think remediation is the bee's knees and it's a great like technique to keep all your flower clean and there's no problems, then I don't think we should be opposed to labeling it. And on the other hand, if you're opposed to remediation and you think it's, not the bee's knees, it's totally not cool and nobody should ever do it, I think you would also be supportive of remediation. This is like one of those rare topics where like people on opposite sides of the issue should agree on at least that thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's like then the thing, but then you get the government to define remediation, and if they don't do it with like knowledge of what's actually going on in actual cannabis growing, like they could just say like, okay, no ozone, or like you got to report if you use this or this or this, and they'll just find another that to use, and that's the kind of comprehensively understanding what we are enjoying in this world is rough across the board. And in cannabis, it's just uniquely this like very opinionated space. Not to say that food isn't. Obviously, you got a lot of vegans. Not to shade vegans, but I'm just glad I'm in my 20s. Like I'm gonna be here for a while, hopefully, to see how this shit plays out. Like it's wild.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I mean, look, we're gonna sound so old. I mean, there's already some ways that I know I sound old. Like, I was just talking to, I think it was the former COO of Revolution about like the advance in dab cart technology, and I was telling him that like when I was in high school, the dab carts we had or the dab pins we had, you had to load those fucking things up like a musket, like one dab at a time. And you had to like hold it a certain way, because if you like just puffed it like a fucking like you puff anything else, like the oil would leak out and like into the mouthpiece and stuff. And like it was like now you've got these like preloaded cartridges that are amazing, like these new rosin cartridges. Chris from Cannabis gave me one at Benzinga, and I was like, oh, I don't really, I vape every once in a while when I have to, but I always think that flower just smokes so much better. And I'm not saying this rosin pen is better than the flower experience, but holy crap, it was a new experience. And I was like, wow, I could actually see myself really enjoying these, The point I tried to make is we've seen a big revolution already, Evolution.
Yeah, I used to have to make my own edibles to get edibles. It was the only way.
Right.
I'm not like a big name edible dealer, Paul.
Yeah. And I'm just guessing, like, how did you surmise what they were dosed at?
Oh, I just like didn't. I guess. Actually, one time I got like in trouble with like, this is like old Maddie lore. I got in trouble with like gang because I burnt the weed, and then they didn't get anybody high.
Snap.
So it's like, we didn't know what we were doing. It was terrible. You would just be like, hey, what percentage is this? And they'd be like, 15. And you'd be like, math from this book. And then, that was it. Now, to this day, I mean, dose edibles at home. Like, you're not trying to know what dosage there, but like, that's why there's the tiers of technology. Like, this technology is good. Like, even remediation is good. It makes it so where weed can be made like faster and quicker and by dumber people, which we don't want to have to do, but it's still good. It's still progress in a sense. It's still cannabis delivered to the people that otherwise would be like thrown out given the stupid standard.
Yeah, and to that end, at least in Illinois, like I don't see, as a Two Dope Dudes said earlier, I have to acknowledge their comment. We can't get movement on a cannabis omnibus. We're not going to get movement on mandatory labeling. I think, again, to that point, on the other hand, we're not going to get any removal of remediation at all entirely for those that might want that, because like in order to keep your cannabis business as lossless as possible, and by that I mean you're not wasting any product, like I can't see any of these cultivators giving up the ability to remediate and retest and resubmit a product as a edible as they do now. You get what I'm saying?
Exactly. I mean, I once had a yield that literally all lost to powdery mildew because it went in outside Chicagoland growing. It hit 30 degrees at night and then hit in the 70s. And when it hits low and it gets frozen, that powdery mildew just like zaps into the bud. It's like you're fucked. And so we remediated that, and I didn't smoke it, but my family did, and like it worked. Like you dunking it in the hydrogen peroxide and the alcohol and the hydrogen peroxide, and then giving it a hang. It was dry shit, but like it didn't grow more spores. Those CFUs didn't actually become more powdery mildew. That's another part of it. And so then it's like, you know, what even on a grower level and an intimate, I was able to use remediation to like save a crop.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the analogies I think Kyle Baker told me is like, you know, the tomato sauce you buy, the applesauce you buy, the puree. You think of all these like products that aren't the apples themselves. I'm not saying that those products are consisted of remediated apples or tomatoes or grapes or insert produce here. What I'm saying is what I've heard is that it's mostly the ones that aren't pretty enough, just pretty enough to be sold on the shelf. It's not even that they're bad. They're just, you know, they got a little bruise on them or something, you know?
Our shake is made, some people say. So it's all the small, tiniest buds that, you know, you could make popcorn, but just make it shake, because we outpour so much shake. It's like, it's not just actually shake.
Right.
Also, somebody dunks on me for dunking in alcohol. It was like a 1% dilution. So
why were they like saying it's bad for you?
No, dunking in alcohol sounds like a terrible idea for nothing else, solubility issues alone. Yeah, you know, somebody on IL trees I think told me to do it, so, or maybe Michigan Gents, I don't know. I was like just desperate, like help me. No matter.
Yeah,
No,
I definitely
I didn't
heard
have to do that. You don't want to have to do that, but like I didn't smoke that, so I didn't smoke that. That's not quality for me. It was saved, but not for me, because I don't want to do that. So that's that personal choice part of it where you lose the whole point of this without the labeling of it.
Yeah. Isn't that also like, I know you were using that for remediation, but isn't that how Rick Simpson oil is made? Like,
it's made with like a ethanol, but yeah, usually
you just like soak it, just
yeah,
like kind of you did.
Ethanol and weed in a magic butter machine at 130 degrees for 8 hours, and then you evaporate off all the alcohol either in a rice cooker or don't use your stove. I started a fire once, genuinely, literally lit my dad's carpet on fire, but because the alcohol is gonna come into your house.
Right.
Burn off, so get a rice cooker. But
yeah.
I have a big jar of it somewhere.
I mean, have you tried it? Did it smoke all right?
Oh, no, I wouldn't smoke RSO. I turn it into gummies, or I will maybe infuse it with sugar.
Gotcha.
I've never made it so well.
I meant your alcohol dipped buds. I know I'm
switching
those
buds. No, I mean those. I mean it was a 1% alcohol. I mean, not even. I think it was a very small alcohol dilution. Like it wasn't like fully. It was like, and you think what you see my plants. I mean, they're taller than me. They're like 10 me's. So it's like you're just dunking them and then in water. Like they're just getting a quick like. And I don't know if that was needed, but the intention was we were going to turn that into hash, but I just like didn't, because I was so weed rich at the time, and I don't even smoke hash, so you know.
Yeah.
The bounty of cannabis.
I feel you on that. There have been crops that I like. Literally, I had a crop one time, and I'm pretty sure I just had a light leak or something, but the plant had hermed out and gone to seed. And I started trimming it and saw that. And I was like literally about to throw the whole fucking thing in the trash can. And my friend was like, no, I will take that. Like, but I'm not bringing that up. I'm bringing that up because you, like you said, when you do grow and you have so much weed around, like sometimes you're just like, I don't even want to fucking deal with this, you know?
Yeah, get on my face. Yeah. I once saw some people early on in my weed days, like burning weed. And I was like, whoa. I'm going to get on that level one day, like just throwing it into the fucking fire. Like, it's too much.
Yeah.
Last harvest, we need to make room. Oh, my God.
That's something I actually did with one of those plants, and I posted on Instagram. It made a lot of people very upset. They were like, you could have made hash out of that. And it's like, I don't have the buckets and stuff to make hash out of that. These are valid points, though. I was being very wasteful. You know, you can definitely recover more out of a plant. Not trying to downplay the valid points.
I have a whole box of trim. I'm just sitting upstairs that I think maybe I'll do something with, but
yeah, make some edibles or something, right?
Who knows?
Yeah. So yeah, the whole topic of remediation is interesting. I hope people appreciate the even-handed approach. Did you have any other thoughts just on remediation in general?
Yeah, I don't know. Just, don't be so harsh on it, but still stand up for what you want. Tell the brands what you want. Tell them what they should be going for. But we're the most educated consumers out there. And anybody watching this would be some of the most discerning consumers out there if you take part in such cannabis media. Because 1 in 8 people smoke weed every day. 1 in 8 people are not thinking about remediation.
Straight up. Yeah, curious in the comments what you guys think. Like, I really think I think Two Dope Dudes, which by the way is if you don't follow them, click on their name and follow them. They have a great podcast. I believe it's called the Elevated News Podcast with Two Dope Dudes, Aaron and Dave. Check that out. They made a really good point about the fact that we can't even get movement on cannabis policy. So if I'm seriously suggesting cannabis labeling for remediation, I get that it's a non-starter, but I want to ask the commenters, putting aside the realities of Illinois politics, do people think, like, again, if you're anti-remediation, I think you'd be all for having a required label. And if you're for remediation because you believe it's all good and well, I would think also you would have no problem flexing that you remediate, right? Curious what the commenters think. But yeah, well, I just thought before, because I know you had mentioned THCA, we can definitely have a good hemp conversation. One thing though, I was just curious about like remediation and stuff and like cannabis testing is this idea. It seems like, and it sort of relates to hemp. I mean, in many ways, what I'm about to say does relate to hemp, but I just wanted to have like a general conversation about cannabis testing. I'm curious what you think. Like, I just read an MJ Biz Daily a few months ago that like, it seems like a recommended standard amongst cannabis regulators is now to have these like state reference laboratories, which Illinois has started to build and other states are starting to build. And it's, at least according to this MJ Biz Daily article, was to address issues like lab shopping, inflated potency, quality inconsistencies, all things we've heard of, right? I'm curious, what are your thoughts? That's like an evolution to your point that you started with. We are seeing this, as the regulators say, we're seeing the plane being built while it's flying. They say that all the time. What do you think about this potential evolution in cannabis testing standards? I feel like it's a big switch.
Yeah, I'm all for state labs that are calibrated at a standard that's going to be across for every single thing that goes through it. That's one of the problems too. It's like every lab, like the way HPLC machines work, like these molecules are tiny and things are imprecise unless they're calibrated correctly. Like, goddamn, our scales get uncalibrated, So it's like there's a lot of there's a lot to be looked at a couple more times in Illinois cannabis besides remediation. And I think that THC testing is one of them. I recently got a strain that was 40%, and I was like, get out of my fucking face!
Right.
Tell me that I'm looking at 40% THC molecules? No.
Yeah, more than half of the bud that's in front of your face is 40% of it is just Delta 9 THC, or I guess whatever.
Yeah, and I agree. Somebody just said the state lies way too much, and that's why it's like people who write these things need to be weed people who are in reality. Like, another thing is I'm in the data a little bit still. I'm not totally data strapped, and like when you ask Illinois consumers what percentage they want, only about a third are saying they want over 30%. So
that makes me feel better about the way that people shop. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I actually am like, who are these people who are saying that they don't care about the percentage? Like, I mean, I'm literally in the data right now. Like 28% in Q4 of 2024 said greater than 30% is what they wanted.
Comment if you shop by THC percentage. I'm just curious if anybody here.
But they make it seem like everyone is doing it. They make it seem like everyone that comes in is always wanting it. And meanwhile, I don't know how this is even real, but 19% are saying they want between 6 and 10% THC. I'm like, where are you even finding this? What are you talking about? And so it's like, these are consumers that aren't just dispensary shoppers. That's one of the things I love about this data set. It is just like, do you smoke? And then, yeah, okay, come answer some questions. So it's very like, not just, oh yeah, I shop at the Cresco's and I got the data from the people in my store. So this is like everybody.
Yeah. I will say it is, one thing that I do hear from even what you might call seasoned veterans, that they feel like the weed's getting a little bit too potent. Do you think maybe that's where that comment is coming from, when they like say something weird like between 6 and 8%?
Probably so. I mean, maybe so. But I mean, I just definitely I went to California and I smoked some of that like really high potency shit. It looked different than any weed I've ever seen here. And it was powdery. It looked like I was smoking 30% THC molecules. And I have never had worse anxiety at that point in my life. I was shocked. So yeah, I mean, it's just not what the plant was supposed to be. And it has effects that aren't optimal because of that, I believe, for my body.
Yeah. Do you have any idea what this means? I see people talking about this online, but I don't know enough about it. They talk about like type 1, type 2, and type 3 cannabis. Do you know what that
I'm
even
not
means?
sure.
Hawaii, are you saying, I'm displaying your comment right now. Are you saying that type 2 is like a lower potency cannabis? Is that what?
Oh, 1-to-1s? Is that Dr.
Yeah,
Keith
Mason
Burritt
from
put out?
Terpy
Oh,
Takes
that makes
is-
sense. Like a type 1 high THC, type
Gotcha.
2 1-to-1, type 3. Yeah, I mean the THC to CBD ratios need to be there in my opinion. Like I smoked a strain. My second time I grew, a Michigan grower gave me this strain called Black Strawberry. Didn't tell me nothing about it other than this is gonna grow really well here, and it did. And I smoked it for a whole fucking winter, and it was like around 420, and I got it tested, and they told me that bitch, I lost the THC percentage, but I won the top CBD. It was 6% THC, 3% CBD. It was like a perfect 2-to-1 that I just like picked up the genetics for, and it smoked like you would know. You had no fucking idea. Like you would think it was the 20%.
That's pretty
Wild.
crazy. That's pretty crazy. But yeah, I mean, one of the reason I said that too is like I know a guy who goes to Jamaica, and he's like, I only smoke the weed in Jamaica because like if I smoke a joint here, he's like, I go insane. But I can sit on a beach in Jamaica and smoke a whole joint to the face and like just feel all right. And look, I want to be very clear. I am not dissing on high potency weed. I like all types of weed. I gotta go crazy sometimes with the edibles, maybe a little, because I've seen like prohibitionist groups like Sam, and I think even like his name's Reggie Guadino. He's like the head of the Cannabis Research Institute or something for the state of Illinois now at the University of Illinois in Chicago. He said like nobody should ever eat 200 milligrams. And it's like, yeah, probably like most normal people, but like I fucking smoke weed a lot, and I like eating 200 plus milligrams sometimes. Like I go crazy, So
yeah,
not dissing.
I feel like that's the thing that people don't understand. It's even like the amount of cannabis you need for personal use. Like somebody who's making a live rosin is gonna have like so much fucking cannabis. I had the pleasure of speaking with somebody recently who is, literally in trouble for how much weed his 5 plants grew. Because
insane.
They have no idea how much you can actually yield from 5 plants. I got 5 pounds from 2 plants. So I wonder, if I'm walking around with 12 and a half pounds of 5 plants in my house, are they going to come arrest me when I'm supposed to be able to grow it? So there's just so many places where they just don't understand.
Yeah. And I will say that, I think the state put this in caveats of like, don't take this as legal advice, when it's like, who else but the state am I supposed to ask for advice for on the law, right? It seems a little weird when they come back and say things like this. But a while ago, I wrote this article. Let me see if I can move this over here and can you still see my screen? Mm-hmm. So I wrote this article and asked, what is the possession limit, basically? Because if you look at the data, in 2018, 249 waivers, which would grant people to have an increase in their allowable cannabis amount beyond the standard limit. So the standard limit's 2.5 ounces for every 2 weeks. That means you can legally procure at least 5 ounces a month or 140 grams. And it showed some people have had their waivers increased to 36 ounces. In 2021, somebody had their waiver increase, or their possession limit rather, increased to 15 ounces. And it's weird. It's like, so what does that mean? Like you said, when you grow at home, and the state of Illinois basically said, like, so that your allotment amount is what you can purchase and possess from a dispensary, but any cannabis produced by cannabis plants grown under the homegrown rules must remain secured within the residence. And I said, so, like, do we have a possession limit at home? And they said yes, although it depends on the source. So purchased cannabis can be at your allotment, but grown cannabis just must remain secured in the house. In other words, like, there is no limit so far as it's secured in the house. But what does that mean? And as you just said, unfortunately, I feel really bad that you said that. And as I've talked to people, like, they get in trouble for this still, for having too much cannabis. And I don't know if it's because it's not secured, however, whatever that means. Because that's the thing. I asked, what does secured mean? And they say, well, it's not defined in the law.
Yeah, like, that's weird, but I have mine just, like, all around me. Because I, like, my style of life is to leave, like, everything out all the time. So it's just, like, yeah, I don't know. It's just, like, to me, it's secure.
Yeah, your door's locked, right?
My doors are locked. I
And
actually
you got a shotgun right behind you.
I have a bat. You know, we have bats. I'm afraid of guns. I'm a very weak person. So if I bring a gun, they're gonna get it from me. But, but anyway,
it's gonna be used against you.
Yeah, it will be. So yeah, but anyway, yeah, it's just so many holes. No one trying to fix them. Any attempt to progress, shut down. Illinois.
Illinois, yeah. Yeah, and I do, like, I don't mean to, sometimes I get the impression that people think that, you know, what I only like to do is complain on this show. And I do, like, try to, it's like one of the main points that my, another plug for my mini doc, makes, is that I'm proud of the progress we've made. Maddie, let me put it this way. I would not be sparking up live on the fucking internet with you right now if it weren't for the progress that we've made. So, like, kudos to that, right?
Totally. We legalized weed. Like, we're alive for this. You know, it's like Harry Carey didn't get to see the Cubs win. We did.
Straight up, that was
but
crazy.
Me from Chicago. I realize my background now is very Chicago. I have like the skyline behind me.
I love that. I didn't even notice that.
It's the vibe.
Cool. Speaking of Chicago, I didn't expect to see you. Feel free to slap me if we weren't actually in Chicago, because we probably weren't. I always say, you taught me this too. You're like, just say Chicagoland, Cole. That's the
yeah.
But where I ran into you at the Honeycomb Hideout, is that in Chicago? I don't think it is.
Yeah, no, it's in Cook County, but it's like, actually, I don't know if it's in Cook County. It's in Chicagoland. It's in the Western Burbs in Addison.
Yeah, that was cool. That was cool. I appreciated. Yep, there we go. Somebody else said Addison. See, they're quick to get you on that, because yeah, I don't know what the hell Chicago is and isn't. I mean, like, I know the big buildings, obviously, like Chicago, but yeah, gets a little fuzzy for me from there.
Farther than Blue Island for you.
That's true. And thank you again, by the way. That's one of the things I meant to mention at the very beginning of the show, is you and the folks at High Focus Media were the people that helped me do the grand reveal to the public of my mini doc. So thank you.
Hell yeah. Yeah, Blue Island Beer Co. is very, very friendly to the cannabis folks, so that was a great spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, somebody already knew what we were talking about, Mr. CBD's Chicago spot. That's right, it was. And you can stay tuned for that episode. Maddie, I think I think at the very beginning of the episode is when TikTok came back online, and I'm like, so what does your phone say? And you gave me the off the wire update of TikTok coming back.
Yeah, that was a weird day.
It was a weird day. We're living in weird times.
Yeah, that's why you need to smoke weed every day. It's a homeostasis drug. It helps you through.
Yeah, straight up. Dude, did you see this on IL Trees earlier? Hold on a second. I don't mean to bring up IL Trees so much. I feel like this is the most IL Trees centric episode we've had in a while.
Honestly, I love it. I feel like I would write a whole article every week on what the fuck happened on IL Trees.
Yeah. Oh, there's always something happening. this ad for people that are listening, yeah, it looks like an ad because it's like from a law office. They say, have you purchased cartridges or disposable vapes from an Illinois dispensary? If so, you may be entitled to cash compensation. No, I'm joking. It didn't say that last part. It says, if so, you may be entitled to participate in our investigation. I'm not trying to give Louis C. Hull's law any free advertising. What the fuck are you investigating about disposable vapes and cartridges in Illinois dispensaries?
Probably metal leaching.
Yeah, maybe. That's another thought that I had heard. Like, this difference from I'm getting high, so I'm having trouble speaking. A difference between Illinois testing standards and I think a new testing standard that was going to come out in Colorado was that they weren't just going to test what's in the vape. They were going to like have a machine that like almost like, for lack of better words, because I don't understand, it's almost like it sucks a little bit of the vape out and it tests that too.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, fuck yeah, let's go.
Yeah, I mean, they don't even have that for nicotine vapes, They're hardly cracking that. And the research coming out is pretty fucking scary. And they just started the first longitudinal study on the actual human effects of nicotine vaping. So it's like cannabis vaping is, honestly, frankly, it scares the shit out of me. I do not vape that often. I have few brands I trust, but at the end of the day, the science is not there yet. And that's a lot of this. This is a very big experiment. Especially with the converted cannabinoids. We didn't even get into that, but like that scares the shit out of me. Acids and solvents in a little metal chamber getting sucked out by heat. Scary.
Yeah, heated up and then changed into other things, right? Because that's what chemicals... I mean, because we should back up for a second. Obviously, not all converted... I know what you meant, but I'm just going to be funny for a second.
Go ahead.
Not all converted cannabinoids are bad. Like you brought up THCA, like it.
That's not converted.
I know, but it decombusts or decarboxylates and converts to delta 9. I was just trying to make a funny joke. What you meant though was
synthetically converted.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the only like thing that I've heard that like looking into that's made me more concerned, and it's not even related to hemp, was just learning that like a lot of the caffeine we consume is like synthetically derived using like, especially some of these energy drinks, these new energy drinks.
I mean, there's so many things. Like I said, you think that this is only loopholes in the Farm Bill?
Right.
No way. Yeah, these poor kids, man, sucking on the primes. And that's like one of the first things I remember studying of Brightfield Group was the cans of cannabis drinks in Canada. They were finding out that the THC was getting leached into the can. So they had to put plastic liners into the cans to make sure that the THC didn't get into the can. And like every time I see a hemp drink, I look at it and I'm like, is this even real? Sometimes, because I'm just like, is there a liner in here? Did somebody figure this out? Because like at the time the answer was like, oh, we don't know. Like it was just Canada was doing it, not the US. So
well, I mean, to another point, like I tried so many different ways to make cannabis drinks at home, and one of the issues I kept running into was the THC, like you'd get it into the liquid, but ultimately it would just like stick to the sides of a container, which is exactly like the problem you were talking about.
Yeah, and that's why like RSO won't do that, because like went through this alcohol thing where it's like, oh god, it's like molecules, like the alcohol molecules like make the cannabis molecules like they like do something to it. Like I wish Nathan wasn't down for the count, he could explain it. But that's why it's then more soluble. And so like it's not that there aren't things they can do that are more soluble. It's more like, oh, metal like just draws this thing onto it, and also it's sitting there for 6 months.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. One of the things I will say, we should definitely have I about said Adam. I meant to say Nathan on the show to talk about those things. The reason I said Adam was I wanted to look up episode 123 and episode 17, and he's probably been on my old podcast in the past, but those are some good ones to look up. It's with Adam Terry from a company called Cantrip, and they claim to use, again, because, and I trust him at his word or whatever, but I don't know how to prove these things. They claim to use naturally derived THC in their products, right? Which is like, again, I'm all for. It's a little confusing when you really think about it, because it's like, how? Because if you know,
I can tell you how.
How?
Basically, think of like liquor v beer, how it's made. They're making it like beer. So like the hemp can be 0.3% THC. So you run that through in a system where it's never at any point isolated, and you're pretty good.
Yeah, I guess, and maybe this is what you just said. This is like the point that I'm getting caught up at the beginning of that process.
Mm-hmm.
Is that there's like somewhere there's a lot of THC, like that you're diluting into all these drinks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Fair. And
that 0.3% like adds up. Like the whole reason we got into this Delta 8 crisis was because when the Farm Bill happened, they grew so much fucking CBD. They had no idea what to do with it. They just started throwing acid on it, and it became Delta 8. Like, I'm not even like kidding at all. And there's like, I truly believe that the actual vape crisis of 2019 was from V1 versions of Delta 8 on the black market. I do not believe it was from vitamin E acetate. So like, yeah. So,
what do you think about people that continue to sell Delta 8, like Incredibles or GTI? It's through a partnership with like Herb.
Yeah.
But
I have no qualms with ingestible Delta 8. Ingestible converted cannabinoids, I have no qualms with, because our digestive system is prepared for this. We suck down alcohol. Like, there's an acceptable amount of byproduct we can agree on for an adult that won't kill us, even though a whole package of it might kill a kid, just like alcohol. But inhalable, I don't know. That's the part that scares me so much. So I really like the Minnesota model, but I wish THCA could stay real too. We want to stay to the true plant. We don't want to make people have to make fucking converted cannabinoids. We want to be able to grow as much cannabinoids as they need to make the products they're producing.
You know what? I think I'm on the same page as you on this. I think, like, especially on the last point you made about like the ingestible versions, because just to give you like a wild example that I'm fully prepared to get roasted for in the comments is I have a friend that went to one of these smoke shops, and he'll get some of the Delta 9 edibles and stuff, and he loves those. But one time he just like was looking at this chart they had up, and it said like THCP is like 30 times more potent than whatever. I don't even know. I just said 30. It could have said more. And he tried it. So what was interesting was it was like an 8 milligram gummy that you split in half, and they recommended splitting the half in half. And he was like, I'll take 4 milligrams. We do, big doses all the time. I'll take 4 milligrams. He was high for like over a day. And it was okay. I want to be clear, because sometimes people tell this story and they're like, I was high for a week and I didn't want to be. No, he was totally up for that. It was cool. And as a result, this is where I'm going to get roasted. I went and bought some. I haven't eaten them yet, but I'm excited to, like, when I have a day or two, like
how is his tolerance after that? Like, that's honestly my biggest fear in trying the alternative cannabinoids. It's not like I don't think THCP has a place for some like extreme cancer patient who needs all that, probably administered in like a very medicinal, strong way. But yeah, I'm just afraid it would fuck up my endocannabinoid system. I'm so afraid of all the, like, even the high beacons and all the undos. Like, they're made with Alvatol. We discovered Alvatol because it's a byproduct of making Delta 8 that clogs up your cannabinoid receptors. So that's probably the only reason Delta 8 is not as strong as Delta 9, because there's Alvatol byproduct in it. So, like, little things like that, it's like, fucking, I'm glad to know it because of Brightfield, but it's not the general knowledge.
Yeah, I didn't know that at all, so I'm going to have to definitely look into that to learn more, because Alvatol, I've heard of the products you referenced, but I've never heard of...
Yeah, that's their active ingredient. It's like a molecule that they discover kind of like clogs up your endocannabinoid system without creating effect. And it appears to clean it out in a sense, too. They use it as, like, every day if you take it, you feel like you took a tolerance break. It's kind of like it's cleaning them, or like kind of forcing them open, but then doing nothing and then going away.
Yeah. Interesting. Somebody else I call this person, I've met them in person, I call him Other Cole. He says it may also be a tolerance thing because they never had that cannabinoid before. That's a good point. Maybe that's why the 4 milligram of THCP hit him so hard. I'm just like, associating the tolerance of
The thing is, though, not to be sus, it could just have been like a very high dose of THC.
Right. That's why I bought multiple. I'm thinking of testing one just to see like what the fuck is actually in it. Dog.
Yeah, good luck. I mean, and that's the thing. Like, I want to see these people as calibrated machines. Like, these molecules are so close to each other. The molecules they're claiming they've created here, it's like, it's just making up stuff for marketing differentiation. I kind of think, but also, I think about how like cannabinoids bind. It's just like it's just so crazy. Like, what's happening? We need to study this endocannabinoid system if these molecules are real and are different from each other.
Yeah. Well, before we go, I do want to try something new. Want to close out this hemp conversation with something interesting that you probably have already seen before, but trying something new. We're taking callers. You can join the show now by going to colememo.com/live and clicking the button.
Whoa.
Yeah, if you want to like say something before we go, please keep it family friendly because this is a family friendly show. I'm just joking. But yeah, let's make sure I got the link up correct. If you go to colememo.com/live, you should be able to jump right in, and we won't be able to speak until we let you speak, and we can take you right down if you start saying crazy shit. But come on, come one, come all if you want to. So I included this in one of my recent articles while we see if anybody's brave enough. I'm joking. Come on, come up, take a hit, say hi if you want. While we wait on people, I wrote this in a policy paper that I think will address most of the issues with hemp, but not to get into that. I just wanted to say this for people, and I know you and I are on the same page about this, but I wanted to have like a short conversation with you about this because I've seen you post a lot of awesome things on LinkedIn about it, and I think this is what people get lost on. Like this section that I'm displaying right now, which says conforming changes to the Controlled Substances Act, basically says that tetrahydrocannabinols, except for the ones in hemp as defined by, they're basically saying it's not included on the Controlled Substances Act. And I guess the point I'm trying to make, just to keep it short, is that if we ever deschedule, which is obviously, I don't mean to speak for everybody, but I think it's the obvious ideal solution. Like rescheduling is, it's kind of like Illinois legalization, like a step in the right direction, but we still got a long way to go. Descheduling, I feel like, is the end. And I guess my point I'm trying to make is I feel like if we ever deschedule legislatively, it's going to look like this. Like it's going to start off by saying conforming changes to the Controlled Substances Act, except instead of making this arbitrary line in the sand, it's going to hopefully say all cannabis, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious what people think.
Yeah, I very much get cannabis out of the Controlled Substances Act. I'm a repeal the Controlled Substances Act. Actually, that is my opinion. Because it doesn't do goddamn shit at all. So. But
yeah, no, I agree. What I was actually just looking for, I've got a shirt or I've got a hat. If people aren't aware of Hamilton Morris, they should look into Hamilton Morris and the content that he produces. He's been it was a show on Vice called Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia. And he has radicalized me to be on the exact same page as you, Maddie, and just saying like we should defund the DEA. In fact, the hat I have it says DEA is a terrorist organization.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy, man. I just like sometimes when you read the history of it, you're like, damn, what a world we could have had. Because they were just kicking away, making things out of hemp, making tinctures and having fun. And they ruined it.
Yeah.
And now we're just crawling back. And that's what I think people get very impatient with cannabis. I never take the stance of like, this is so hard. I got to get out of the industry. I don't think that. Everything forever will be this industry for me because it's just like, that's all there is. Like, I can't do anything that's not like towards the cause. So.
I feel you on that. I feel you on that. Somebody asked if I'm selling those hats. I'm not, but Hamilton Morris is. That's how I got it. So look him up on social media, and you should be able to find his hats and everything else that he has. So I'll display his Instagram for just a moment. Yeah, interesting stuff, Maddie. Anything else on the hemp topic that you wanted to mention? I know it's a hot one, so there's obviously many ways we can go with it. But
Yeah, I mean, just I hope, I don't know what's going to happen legislatively, but I hope we don't lose the ability to have THC drinks in Binny.
Right.
Because I don't know. That's moving normalization forward more than these dispensaries, in my opinion.
Amen.
Yeah, cannabis in channels that is not locked down should just be consistently celebrated. And any brand that is like mad that this is happening needs to like go talk to a planner about how they can like get in on it and get their product at a bunch of convenience stores and gas stations, and then say, hey, the higher dose one, like it's like a natural capture of newbies, and they're just ignoring it. And that to me is like, my business mind is like, what? So
yeah, and it really tugs at my heart from the activist side. Like we were just talking about descheduling it. It's like it almost feels like people that insist on the dispensary model. I'm not saying that there can't be dispensaries. I'm not saying there can't be at liquor stores, right? I'm saying that I can buy a lot of shit at Walmart, and I'm just using Walmart as an example, and I think I should be able to buy weed there too, or any other store.
totally.
And I think that, like, to your point that you were making and looping it back to descheduling, I feel like people that insist that it must be only in a dispensary, we're not even talking about license limits or anything, just it can only be sold in a dispensary. I feel like what you're saying is it's like cannabis is safe, but it's not that safe.
Mm-hmm.
Cannabis is legal, but it's not that legal. And you're almost saying, honestly, just to wrap up my point here, like you're almost saying it should be treated as a controlled substance. That's like why all these things exist. Seed to sale, all this bullshit. Like obviously we need chain of custody stuff for recalls or whatever, but all of this shit exists to prevent diversion and to treat this drug as if it's a controlled substance, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. To share a data point on that, in Michigan, as the price of a recreational ounce fell, the amount of people buying on the recreational market went up, and the amount of people buying on the illicit went down. Illinois has not seen that same sort of experience, and it's continuously, while still more people are buying recreational, it's only about 6 to 10 points between, rather than this full drop off 30% margin that Michigan experienced. And it was almost entirely correlated with the falling price of an ounce, which they publish every month because they have a cannabis organization managing the program. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Michigan is just good in so many ways. It is interesting. I know this is a different data point, and I might have this just so Google it, folks. I've said something like this on somebody to Twitter recently, but I don't have the data off the top of my hand, and I'm not going to go searching through my Twitter for it. For like the last 4 or 5 years, even though cannabis is cheaper in Michigan, they've they've made more money selling cannabis than us, despite the fact that it is cheaper.
Oh yeah, totally.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so when people say that there's a race to the bottom, it's not actually a race to the bottom. It's sharing the pie that they don't want to do. But
yeah.
I yap all day about this. I'm too high, so wrap me up here.
Hey, let's do it. Cool. Well, we didn't have any callers. That's okay. That's
no
something
callers.
we can do in the future.
Scared.
Yeah.
No, I was kidding.
It's all good. It's all good. Thank you everybody for tuned in. We're live, so you never know. I was a little nervous too. It's kind of a interesting thing to try out, but I figure
I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it could be cool. So before we go, do you want to remind folks where they can find you online and all that good stuff?
Yes, absolutely. I'm made_content, and I'm part of High Focus Media. But really, follow Ika, meet.ika on Instagram. We're going to have some really good shit happening, hopefully this year. We're kicking every year. We have to, because consumption is a continuation of our legalization as well. We didn't really talk about that at all, but my cause really is consumption, because I feel exactly what Aaron says. All this advocacy for cannabis, we got to focus on what we do with it is our approach. So meet.ika.
Yeah. And I don't know if we said it yet, but that's the Illinois Cannabis Consumers Association, right? Or something
Actually,
like
just
that?
Consumption Association, Illinois Cannabis Consumption Association.
There it is, there on the bottom of the screen. I should have waited for that, but
Yeah.
cool. Well, thank you so much for what you do. You know, I feel like we did talk about it just a little bit with that hemp conversation at the end. You know, it sounds like where we're coming from, and that's where you come from with ICA, is just how do you normalize cannabis? How do you make it so that, you know, it's just like any other space and event you can throw in the state of Illinois. And so thank you for doing the work that you do. And thanks for coming on the show at like such short notice. It was fun to like chat about remediation and all things cannabis. And yeah, in the future, if you ever have anything ICA related or whatever, you know, you can always reach out, and I'd love to have you back on.
We will. We definitely will very soon. So thank you for having me, Cole, and thank you for always keeping this podcast alive and well. I remember I was so scared when you ended Illinois, but it's continued on, and I love it.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Thank you for your support. And seriously, thanks for coming out to the Honeycomb Hideout the other day to hang out with me. That was really cool. So
hell yeah, anytime. That's my spot now. So shout out Mark.
Well, yeah, shout out Mark. Look up the Honeycomb Hideout. And folks, happy Saturday. I hope you're having a good one, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of your Saturday. We'll see you on the next one. Take care.